Kelaniya විශ්වවිද්‍යාලය කවදත් පරිණත ශාස්ත්‍රීය පරිශ්‍රය
the International Conference on the Humanities, ICH 2016, which is most aptly titled The Engagement with the Environment.
அனைவருக்கும் வணக்கம். கலனி பல்கலைக்கழகத்தின் மானிடவியல் பீடத்தினால் இரண்டாவது தடவையாக நடாத்தப்படும் சர்வதேச மானிடவியல் மாநாடு 2016ஆம் ஆண்டு ஆரம்ப விழாவிற்கு வருகை தந்துள்ள உங்கள் அனைவரும் வருக வருக என அன்புடன் வரவேற்கின்றோம்.
This conference in 2016 is aptly titled, as I told you before, The New Directions in the Humanities, Our Engagement with the Environment, organized by the Faculty of Humanities, University of Kelaniya, Sri Lanka. With great pleasure, we welcome all of you, distinguished guests, esteemed participants, and every academic present here today to the grand opening of the conference. For the officially Sri Lankan initiation of the ceremony to light the traditional oil lamp, I most respectfully invite our chief guest, Vice Chancellor of the University of Kelaniya, Senior Professor Sunanda Madhuma Bandara, our keynote speaker from the Asia Institute, University of Melbourne, Australia, Professor Alexander Adela, our guest of honor, Dr. Alan Race, the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Lakshman Senviratna, the Dean of the Faculty of Graduate Studies, Professor Arya Ratna Jayamaha, the Dean of the Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor A.H.M.H. Aberatna, the Dean of the Faculty of Science, Professor Kapila Senviratna, the Dean of the Faculty of Computing and Technology, Professor P.G. Vijayaratna, the Registrar of the University of Kelaniya, Mr. W.M. Karunaratna, our librarian, Mr. L.A. Jayatissa, Director of the Indian Cultural Center, Ms. Rajashri Bera, Cultural Affairs Officer of the American Embassy, Mr. Joseph Schaller, Chair of the ICH Organizing Committee, our very own Dr. Ramula Razul, from the ICH Organizing Committee, Professor Nimal Malavarachi, Professor Patrick Ratnayaka, Dr. Prashanti Narangoda, and Dr. Samanthi Jawardana. We would also like to invite one of the presenters as representation of the conference.
Camera बनाएंगे फोटो दे दो अरे समाके
Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the university anthem.
Desakitu gosa urumaya suratina siyat suwanda vidu kirana bedadena සරාසඳ කිවිදුලකර උදාදින කැලණිය සරසවි මාතා කැලණිය සරසවි මාතා සයුරවි වැයට නුවණ දෙන සත් සිළුමිනවි ඉසුරු සලාලන ජයේ ජීව උල්පතවන් නොසිඳෙන කැලණිය සරසවි මාතා කැලණිය සරසවි මාතා සිය දෙස කිතු ගොස් උරුමය සුරකින සියත් සුවඳ විදු කිරණ බෙදා දෙන සරාසඳ කිවිදුලකර උදාදින කැලණිය සරසවි මාතා කැලණිය සරසවි මාතා පිවිතුරු නැනගුණ යුගයෙන් යුගයට ඇයට පිළින කර කරු පිරිවර සහ මුළු ලොව සරසන කැලණිය සරසවි මාතා සිදු අඹරේ බැබලේවා සිය දෙස කිතු ගොස උරුමය සුරකින සියත් සුවඳ විදු කිරණ බෙදා දෙන සරාසඳ කිවිදුලකර උදාදින කැලණිය සරසවි මාතා සිදු අඹරේ බැබලේවා
Thank you. You may be seated. In order to adorn this opening ceremony by stepping into our head table today, I would like to most respectfully invite the following dignitaries. Our Vice Chancellor, forgive my mishap. There's a small video with a very special introduction about the Faculty of Humanities right now. That presentation certainly took me back to the days when I was an undergraduate of the University of Kelaniya, very much nostalgic. So once again, with the presentation, I would like to welcome all of you for ICH 2016. Right now, to adorn the head table, I would like to invite the following dignitaries. Our own Vice Chancellor, Senior Professor Sunanda Madhuma Bandara, our keynote speaker, Dr. Alexander Adela, Dean of Faculty of Humanities, Professor Lakshman Senviratna, and the Chair of the ICH Organizing Committee, Dr. Ramola Rasool. And also our very special guest of honor, Dr. Alan Reyes. All right, in order to formally receive the gathering with a warm welcome address, I'd like to invite the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Lakshman Senviratna.
Good morning, all of you. Venerable Mahasangha, our chief guest, Professor Sunanda Madhuma Bandara, Vice Chancellor of the University of Kelaniya, our keynote speaker, Professor Alexander Adler, guest of honor, Dr. Alan Reyes, conference chair, Dr. Ramola Rasool, all the deans of the faculties, the registrar, the librarian, all the directors of University of Kelaniya, Director ICC, all the academic staff and distinguished guests, dear students. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome you all for the second international conference organized by the Faculty of Humanities in University of Kelaniya. The Faculty of Humanities of the University of Kelaniya is the oldest faculty which has contributed immensely to the academic development and the national development of Sri Lanka. Constituted by 9 departments and the unit, it imparts knowledge and prepares students to obtain first degree and postgraduate degrees in 25 subject areas. As you know, the main field of study covered by the faculty are languages, fine arts, religions, and culture. In terms of language studies, our faculty is in the forefront among all universities in the dissemination knowledge in the language, both modern and classical. As for fine arts, our graduates have won enough awards nationally and internationally, flying our flag high. In religious studies, especially in Buddhist studies, we have made our mark not only in Sri Lanka, but worldwide. We conduct diplomas and graduate studies in Buddhist studies internationally. We are proud to be the faculty with the highest number of foreign students among all the faculties of the University of Kelaniya. And moreover, for that matter, among the Institute of Higher Learning in the entire nation. Hence, we have reached the vision of the faculty, which is commitment to become the center of excellence in the field of humanities. However, one area that needs boosting is conducting more research to generate new knowledge and to connect existing knowledge with practical situation and trends of the world. For that, I believe international conferences of this nature are absolutely necessary. Now I wish to warmly welcome all the venerable sirs who are participating in this inauguration, and also I cordially welcome our chief guest, Senior Professor Sunanda Maddum Bandara, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Kelaniya. It's a great pleasure for me to welcome our keynote speaker, Professor Alexander Adler. I warmly welcome our guest of honor, Dr. Alan Reyes. Also, I am pleased to welcome Professor A. Chimich Aberatna, Dean Faculty of Social Sciences, Professor Kapila Senaviratna, Dean Faculty of Science, Professor Aryaratna Jayamaha, Dean Faculty of Graduate Studies, Professor Gamini Vijayaratna, Dean Faculty of Computing and Technology. I wish to welcome all the academic staff very warmly. I would like to welcome the registrar, the librarian, and all the administrative and non-academic staff. Also, I warmly welcome all the directors of our university. And I am happy to welcome Mrs. Rajeshri Behera, the director of the Indian Cultural Center, and Cultural Officer, American Embassy, and all the distinguished guests who present here on our invitation. I warmly welcome the President and all the office bearers of the Kelaniya University Teachers Association. Also, I would like to welcome local and foreign presenters and students. Further, I would like to warmly welcome and convey my sincere thanks to Dr. Ramula Rasool and the organizing committee, especially Professor Patrick Ratnayaka, Professor Nimal Malwarachi, Dr. Prasanthi Narangoda, Dr. Samanthi Jayavardhana, Senior Lecturer Dinali Fernando, for organizing this research conference. Finally, while wishing all the best for this research conference, I hope we all will enjoy sharing new knowledge in the Faculty of Humanities. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. In order to address the distinguished gathering, now I would like to invite our chief guest, Senior Professor Sunanda Maddum Bandara, the Vice Chancellor of the University of Kelaniya.
Venerable Mahasangha, Professor Lakshman Sirviratna, Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor H.M. Jabiratna, Professor Kapili Sirviratna, Professor Aryaratna Jayamaha, Dr. Gamini Vijayaratna, Deans of the faculties, professors, head of the departments, and members of the academic staff, Professor Adlia, guest keynote speaker, Dr. Alan Reyes, guest of honor, ladies and gentlemen, I am delighted to be here today at the inauguration of the second International Conference on Humanities. We all know that the University of Kelaniya places a lot of emphasis on research. At present, the university provides unprecedented support and encouragement to the academic staff to encourage them to engage in research and to disseminate their research findings. The university hosts each year a number of international conferences and symposia and strives to become a center of excellence in knowledge creation. Research in the humanities engages with and seeks response to urgent issues around us. Academics in the various branches of the humanities provide invaluable insight which are essential to social and cultural well-being. I understand that this year the theme of the conference, our engagement with the environment, has attracted attention from both local and foreign researchers. It's an opportune time to re-examine our engagement with the environment and at the same time explore new avenues for research. I am confident that the conference provides a rich platform for exchange of knowledge across disciplines. Conference presentations are also an important part of professional development. By organizing research conference in the university, we not just invite scholars to present research papers, but we are also able to inspire new researchers, our undergraduate and postgraduate students, and nurture a research culture among them. I welcome all foreign presenters to the University of Kelaniya and wish them a pleasant stay. I understand that this year's conference has a series of panel discussions on the responses of various aspects of the humanities to environmental challenges, and that these discussions involve many subject specialists from various disciplines from Sri Lanka and abroad. I hope that you will take part and benefit from this and all the other sessions of the two-day conferences. I thank the Faculty of Humanities for taking the initiative to organize this conference and make it an annual event on the university calendar. I extend my gratitude to Professor Lakshman Selviratna, Dean, Faculty of Humanities, Dr. Romela Rasul, the Chair of the conference, and the other members of the organizing committee for organizing this event, and wish all presenters and participants a very fruitful 2 days. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Now, to step into the moment, to the highlight of today's proceedings, I would like to invite Dr. Samanthi Jayawardena of the Department of Modern Languages to present the introduction of our keynote speaker.
Good morning. Dr. Alexander Adarilla is a Principal Fellow in the Asia Institute at the University of Melbourne and a Fellow of the Academy of Humanities, Australia. His research is on the structure and the history of Austronesian languages with emphasis on varieties of Malay and the languages of Borneo, Madagascar, and Taiwan. He is currently involved in a study of the linguistic and migration history of Madagascar with a grant from the Australian Research Council. Since his retirement from the University of Melbourne in 2009, Dr. Adarilla has been a research fellow at Institutes of Advanced Studies in Belgium and the Netherlands, the National Museum of Ethnography in Osaka, Tokyo University of Foreign Studies, and the University of Cologne. He has done research on Sri Lankan Malay and has published a chapter pointing out possible East Indonesian Malay origins of the language. And today, he will speak on a lexicographical glimpse of the Malay environmental past. Dr. Adarilla, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your introduction. I would like to thank the University of Kelaniya and the Vice-Chancellor for giving me the opportunity to give a keynote speech to the opening of the Second International Conference of Humanities. In this keynote, I would like to show how the vocabulary of a language reflects the environmental reality in which its speakers have traditionally lived, even if that reality is often not relevant anymore in the present. I would like to talk about the Malay language, which is also represented in Sri Lanka, as you know, by a minority. And I would like to start with an example of my own language, just very quickly. I won't linger on that for too long. If you look in your handout, you will see that there are some 25 expressions, or even more, I don't know, that have to do with the sea, boats, sailing, and winds. That is typical of the Dutch language, which is spoken close to the sea. Many Dutch speakers it's a seafaring nation. Its whole history depends on contacts overseas and with the sea. And many of our expressions reflect that. For instance, if you look at every Malay uses berselisih, and it means to fight. What it literally means is the two boats that try not to hit each other in the night, when they pass in the night in a narrow river. That is the literal meaning of berselisih. Menolak means to refuse. Every Indonesian, every Malay knows that. But literally, it means to hold off the boat from the side or from the jetty. That is the literal meaning. Menunda means to postpone. If you look in the old dictionaries, it means to give rope when you leave when you leave a place. You give rope and you take the river, basically. Hulu is generally known as country. A country hik is an orang hulu, but it basically means, it originally means upriver. Mampir, to call in, actually literally means to moor your boat. An aliran is a political or ideological or religious movement. Literally, it means the current in a river. Maju means to be developed or to progress, and it literally means go downstream or downstream, so go with the flow. Pangkalan is jetty, but it is used as basis, and rantau actually refers to a beach in a river band, and that has become the word for migrant or overseas, because when you follow the river, you go from bend to bend to bend, and then you end up far away from the original area where you come from. This is typical for the Minangkabau people in Sumatra. They would leave their native village and go from rantau to rantau to rantau in order to build their own capital. Minang society was a matrilineal society, is still a matrilineal society, and with the coming of Islam, you got that strange situation that matrilineality was the norm, and Islam, which is more patriarchal in its structure, was the new norm. So you got a bit of friction and Minangkabau people would leave their village in order to find their fortune elsewhere, and then come back after 15 or 20 years with the newly acquired capital, so that they would, that would guarantee them a bit of freedom when they get married. And if they get married, they would end up in the same house as the mother-in-law, the grandmother of the wife, which, so basically that is the history of rantau. Nowadays in Indonesian and in Malaysian, rantau means migrant people who live outside their home country and have formed a new society, a new society basically. Two other terms, Barat and Timur, are wind names. They are the names of monsoons. The Barat is the western wet and virulent monsoon. It's a wet and hard wind. And Timur is the dry southern eastern wind. These terms nowadays stand for Western, Occidental, Eastern, and Oriental. I would like to tell something about the Malay compass card and the history that is reflected in it. In your handout, you can see the Malay compass card. You've got in the north, Utara, which I don't have to explain to you because you have that word in Sinhalese as well. In the south, you have Selatan, which means the general area of the strait. And the other terms derive from Barat and Timur, more or less. I'm trying to make this one talk. It has no effect. It has very little effect on the map. See if this one makes any difference. No, doesn't matter. As you can see, the Strait of Malacca goes between Malaysia and Indonesia, the island of Sumatra, the westernmost large island of Indonesia. You can see the city of Malacca, and in the south you can see Palembang, which used to be called Sriwijaya. Malacca is often referred to as the cultural center of Malay civilization. To the south of Malacca, you have the Strait of Malacca, that is Selatan. To the north, you've got Utara, a self-explanatory term. And then you've got Barat and Timur and Tenggara. You can see on your handout that Barat Laut, Barat, Barat Daya, Timur, Timur Laut, they sort of reflect a system like the English system, basically. However, Utara, Tenggara, and Selatan are not fitting in that system. So let me give some Malay history. In the 7th century, there was the cradle of civilization, of Malay civilization, originated, as far as we know at least, in the 7th century in South Sumatra. It was called Sriwijaya. It was a seaborne empire led, Sriwijaya was the center. It was Buddhist, and it was coastal, and it was a seasonal stopover. The Chinese Buddhist I Ching would go from China to India, or to, I don't know, maybe Tibet, rather, and he would make a stopover in Srivijaya. He would stay there for a number of years. I think he was there for 7 years. So Srivijaya was a Buddhist center. Why was it a center? Well, that's obvious if you know the geopolitics of East Asia. If you see the Strait of Malacca, to the east you have the China Sea. There is China, Korea, Vietnam, Japan, and so on. That is that's one big cultural and trade network. Many influences go back and fro in that area. If you go to the other side of the Strait of Malacca, you find the Indian Ocean, which is also a cluster of trade networks, and there are all kinds of civilizations that are influencing one another. Of course, India is central, and as far as Indonesia is concerned, Sri Lanka is also central for the spread of Buddhism. These two worlds, the East Asian world, the South Asian Indian Ocean world, they try to meet, and they try to have commercial links. In order to do so, they have to go through the Straits of Malacca. That is the shortest and best way to get in touch. But if you go to Malacca, you've got the monsoon wind that brings you there pretty fast. Once you are there, you are passing on goods and you are loading new goods, and then you either go back or you go on to India, but the time has lapsed, if you come from China at least, and if you're from India, you want to go on to China. You have to wait for the other monsoon to pick up and to blow in the right direction. So either you go back and then you can't use the same wind because that was the wind that was behind you. You have to wait. Or you go on to India, then maybe you have lost so much time that you also have to wait for the winds to turn. So this is why the Strait of Malacca has become a trading center, is a natural trading center. It is also a cultural center because people have to wait. This is how Srivijaya became a Buddhist center and a cultural center and the cradle of Malay civilization. Srivijaya didn't last half a millennium because of siltation. Alluvial material coming down from the river would make the harbor impassable for boats. So the court had to move to another place in the Strait of Malacca. So in the 15th century, they moved from Srivijaya to the other side of the Strait of Malacca, which is Malacca. Malacca was the cultural center of the Malays in the 15th century. Early 16th century, it was destroyed by the Portuguese. That was not the end of Malay civilization, because the Malays spread all over Southeast Asia, started new, smaller centers, and in diaspora, basically, they did a tremendous job in exporting the Malay civilization, which had become Islamic in the 15th century. So that is the history of the origins of Malays. What is important is that the Strait of Malacca will always be a trade center of enormous importance and a geopolitical center. It is not for nothing that the small mercantile state of Singapore is doing so well at the moment. It is simply the harbor and the city that has taken over from Malacca and from Sriwijaya and from another few places that did very well in between and that I'm not mentioning. If we look back, can we see that one slide back? Yes, thank you. If we now realize that Malay civilization did not start in Malacca, but in Sriwijaya, in South Sumatra, then we understand why the compass card is so inconsistent. If you look at Uttara, that means north. That is basically a patch term in order to avoid the issue of towards the sea and away from the sea. Laut means towards the sea. And originally, you had Barat Laut for northwest, Timur Laut for northeast, and Laut, sea, and towards the sea for the north. That fits with Palembang and Sriwijaya. Palembang is built on the same place where Sriwijaya used to be. Palembang is not at the coast, but the coastline has expanded over the last 1,500 years. It has expanded by 70 kilometers, and that is why Palembang is not at the coast today. Selatan is a patch term which took the place of Daya, and Daya means towards the interior. If you are in Sriwijaya, the interior is to the south. The sea is to the north. And that brings us to this amended system on your last page, I believe. There you can see Laut to the north, Daya to the south, Barat to the east, Timur to the west, and then all intermediate terms fall into place. The only problem is that we don't know where the term Tenggara comes from. It was suggested that it was a Tamil term meaning embankment. Well, that could be, but it doesn't explain everything, does it? Not to me, at least. Anyway, that's the only question that remains open after this analysis. In Austronesian languages, in Malayo-Polynesian languages, the two most important directions are towards the sea, Laut, and towards the interior, Daya. You may know about the Daya people of Borneo. These are the people who live in the interior. The Toraja of East Indonesia, these are the To people living in the Raja, in the interior. This is all derived from Daya, interior. So this axis of towards the sea and away from the sea was used perpendicularly on the axis of the two winds, east monsoon, west monsoon. And this is the origin of the Malay compass card. So the system of cardinal directions of the Malays, the compass card, the Malay compass card, hides the secret of the original cradle of Malay civilization. It tells you where the Malays come from, rather than Malaysia, which is a very late Malay colony, they come from South Sumatra, where the Malays are much more entrenched, and in Borneo, they are even more entrenched than that. This is a clear example of how the vocabulary of a language often holds the key of the environmental past. Today, Malays are not living in boats that much. Malaysia is a modern state, Indonesia is too, for the Malay part at least, certainly. But I hope that I demonstrated how the environment is reflected in the language. Maybe not in the way that it tells you how Malays live and do things, but it reflects in arrears with the backlog. It tells you where they come from and how they used to live. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Professor. In order to appreciate your contribution and presence at ICH 2016, we would like to present to you a token of appreciation, and for that, I would like to welcome the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Lakshman Senviratne, fondly known as Dean Sir. We would also like to appreciate the presence of Dr. Alan Reyes to ICH 2016, and for that I would like to invite Dr. Romola Rasool in order to present a token of appreciation. Now it is my pleasure to call onto the podium in order to launch the proceedings of ICH 2015, Head of the Department of English, Ms. Stanley Fernando.
Honorable members of the clergy, the Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Lakshman Senviratne, Dr. Alexander Adila, Dr. Paul Rees, Deans of Faculties, dignitaries, invitees, presenters, guests, and students. It gives me great pleasure to speak to you today about ICH 2015, the proceedings of the conference of last year, which we are launching today. This collection of papers is an outcome of the first ever International Conference of the Humanities of the University of Kelaniya. It was held last year under the theme New Dynamics, New Divergences, and New Directions. The sessions at this conference comprised a large number of papers presented in many areas of the humanities that included religious studies, language and literary studies, cultural studies, aesthetic studies, gender studies, and discourse studies. This reflected the multidisciplinarity of the humanities. The selected papers in this inaugural volume also reflect this range, as well as the interdisciplinarity, which has always been a feature of academic research in the arts. In this volume, you will see literary studies intersecting with those of language studies, while a study on language pedagogy is located in the issues of political and cultural expression. The emphasis on the local is also naturally influenced by international research trends and methodologies, bringing together the local in global research concerns. This inaugural publication is also a bilingual publication. The encouragement given to researchers to present and to write up research in the two local languages, Sinhala and Tamil, may seem controversial at an international conference. However, this volume is an attempt to acknowledge the significance of local languages, which has often been elided in humanities research in our inexorable march towards a purely English language-based tradition of research. It is well known among critical language theorists like Robert Phillipson that English continues to become the sole language of international research. Research produced in other languages, even those with much longer traditions of recording and disseminating knowledge, is in danger of becoming extinct. As such, the way in which those of us whose chosen fields of inquiry are predominantly located in the local languages, and how we construct new knowledge based on local traditions and local systems of knowledge formation continues to be greatly compromised. This naturally will ultimately impact negatively on the quality of international research, as the global is indeed made up of the local. Therefore, as we embrace English as a language of academic research, we must ideally develop a tradition of skilled academic translation so that local knowledge continues to be created and is also effectively disseminated to the international research community. So, this volume can be seen as an initial step in this direction. This volume also demonstrates the hurdles of academic writing in English, a far less familiar second language to most of our researchers in the university. None of the papers are written by those who claim to be experts in English. As such, the influence of local languages can be found in local forms of expression, discourse, style, and rhetorical features in this publication. While editorial decisions were made at times to erase some of these differences, at other times, I avoided this in order to preserve the authentic voice of the writer. The volume also reflects the research rigor of fairly senior academics, as well as the challenges faced by novice academic researchers. Some papers reflect limited research experience, whether it is in the conceptualization of the research study, its scope, its methodology, or in its location in existing research, while others display skills in conducting research that have been learned and honed over time. Thus, in a sense, this volume reflects the strengths of experienced researchers as well as pitfalls faced by novice researchers. This, I think, is a feature of most collected papers of international symposia that come out at present. Thus, while acknowledging the significance of the publication of full papers, it would serve us well, I believe, to consider this inaugural volume an essential first step in the journey of developing a more effective research tradition in the humanities, particularly among new academics and novice researchers. Most of all, this has been an extremely important learning experience for myself as the editor, as the primary editor, I should say, of this volume. Just how much of a novice I am in editing, I learned by this experience. This publication has been supported by the Research Council of the University, the Vice Chancellor, Senior Professor Sunanda Madhuma Bandara, and the chairman of the Research Council, Senior Professor Vijay Ratna, have extended their continuous support to improve research in the country. I acknowledge their contribution with gratitude. I also have to acknowledge the constant support, the kindness, and the humanity of our Dean, Professor Lakshman Senviratna, who is always supportive and never annoyed or even harassed. I think it is a miracle. I also have to acknowledge the friendship, enthusiasm, and the idealism of my beloved friend, the conference chair, Dr. Romola Rasool, who's pretending not to look at me right now, and also the members of the conference organizing committee, working with whom was an experience in warmth, good humor, and fun, despite a rather unfortunate culinary lapse on my part, which involved a pot of badly cooked parippu or dal. I acknowledge their friendship and their support with gratitude. I also must record my thanks to my friend and colleague Kusum Herath, who readily took on the task of editing all the Sinhala papers with me. I will be failing in my duty if I don't acknowledge the contribution of the reviewers of the papers that were published, and also finally, the publishers, Vidyalankara Press of Kelaniya, for their timely and patient service. Most of all, congratulations are due to the contributors for their submissions. We thank them for their interest in this publication and thank them for submitting to our publication and wish them all the very best in their future research work. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Miss. Miss Dinali Fernando will be handing over the proceedings to the dignitaries right now. In order to deliver the vote of thanks, I'd like to call upon the chair of ICH 2016 Organizing Committee, Dr. Romola Rasool. I also should say she has some very good news for next year.
Respected members of the clergy, special invitees, members of the head table, guests, students, presenters, good morning and welcome from the committee. I have a fairly long list of people we need to thank. I ask you for your patience, but I have to mention them all because they've all given us immense support. First, I would like to thank the Vice Chancellor of the University of Kelaniya, Senior Professor Sunanda Madhuma Bandara, for all his support, not only for this conference, but for the promotion of research at this university at every level. Next, I would like to thank our Dean of the Faculty of Humanities, Professor Lakshman Senviratna, for his guidance and support at all times. Thank you to Professor Alexander Adela for delivering the keynote address. I'm sure the linguists among us in the audience would have appreciated the speech, as I'm sure did everybody else. Dr. Alan Rice for gracing this occasion as our guest of honor. Thank you very much. Thank you to all the deans of faculties for coming this morning. And also our special thanks to the plenary speakers, Professor George Brain, Professor Maitri Vikramasinghe and Professor Chandra Reddy of the University of Delaware, who will be joining us virtually tomorrow. And also our special thanks to the members of the panel discussions for giving so generously of their time. I need to mention that one of the innovations of this conference is that we have organized 4 panel discussions on the themes of religion and environment, cultural anthropology, literature, and the performing arts and the environment. So I hope you will all attend those panel discussions as well as the 3 plenary speeches, and please benefit from those opportunities. Our appreciation also to the reviewers of the abstracts and chairpersons of the academic sessions. Thank you once more, especially to the chairpersons who were informed with not very much notice, but who were very gracious. And also, we appreciate the support of the chairman of the University of Kelaniya Research Council, Professor M.J.S. Vijayratna, who is unfortunately unable to be with us today because he's away overseas. Thank you to the heads of all departments of the Faculty of Humanities, and also our special thanks to Joseph Shala, Rachel O'Hara, and Shamini Sinnaya of the American Embassy for kindly helping us to facilitate the virtual presentation with Professor Chandra Reddy. Thanks also to the Central Environmental Authority and its chairman, Professor Lal Mervin Dharmasiri, Nippon Paints and its director, Mr. Rajaheva Bovala, Maximus and Mr. Tusita Ranasinghe for their generous sponsorship. One note about the stationery used for the conference: most of it was on recycled paper, in keeping with the theme of our conference, which is preservation of environment. And Maximus was the company that supported us with the provision of the recycled paper. Thanks also to the registrar, the senior assistant registrars and assistant registrars, and all other members of the administrative staff, the Bursa and deputy Bursa of the supplies branch, the assistant registrar of the Faculty of Humanities, Ms. Shamika Hapuhinna, and her staff for their help, the ICT Center for their help with live streaming this opening ceremony, Vidyalankara Press for printing the proceedings and the book of abstracts. Our special thanks to our student volunteers. They've been working long and hard until very late last night and many nights before that to make this event, the opening ceremony and the events at the K14, the academic sessions, a success. Thank you very much. Thank you to the curator, Mr. Aruna Shanta, and the staff of the landscaping unit, the works engineer, Mr. Gunaratna, and his staff, the chief security officer and the security staff of the university, Mr. Asita Abekon for doing all our designing work, Mr. Premjit Williams for designing the cover of the proceedings, the media unit for assisting us with publicity, the staff and students of the Visual Arts and Design and Performing Arts unit for doing cultural items for the conference dinner, the staff and students of the Drama and Theatre and Image Arts unit for producing the curtain raiser video and doing the photography and videography of this event, the Faculty of Humanities web committee members Amila Madhushankar and Lakshika Jayakodi for their wholehearted support. We harassed these 2 young men, but they were very, very supportive throughout the harassment. Thank you to Anupama Veerasinghe and Anuradha Jayasinghe for doing the announcing for us this morning. Thank you very much to all the presenters. Without you, this conference would not be possible. We appreciate your support and your participation. And finally, I would like to thank the committee that made this conference possible. This is the 2nd year I've coordinated the organizing committee's efforts, and it has been an absolute pleasure. We've had frustrating times, but we've had so many good times over the last couple of months of organizing. Thank you very much, sir, Professor Nimal Mallavarachi, for all your support. Professor Patrick Ratnayaka for this beautiful opening ceremony and all the hard work of your staff. Dr. Prashanthi Narangoda for being so constantly with me in all our planning and our execution. Dr. Samanthi Jayawardena for your quiet efficiency. They were the coordinators of this event. Thank you also to my good friend Dinali for editing the proceedings, for generally making sure we were doing all right, I was doing all right. I appreciate it. Nandula Pereira, Sabrina Niles, Anton Pushparaja, Tilina Vikramarachi, Anand Abesundara, Jaimal De Silva, Amila Kaluarachi, Venerable Udavala Revata, Dr. Swarna Ihalagama, Buddhika Jayasundara, Madara Karunaratna, Miss Isha Gamlat, Tarupati, Rukmal, Upul, Danushka, Prabhat, Chamila Somipat, all of you, I beg your pardon if I have not mentioned any names, but you know who you are. We've worked very closely on this project for a few months now, and I just want you to know how thankful I am for your support. And that brings us to the end of the list of people I wish to thank, but I do have one other small task, one that gives me immense pleasure. It is my privilege to be able to announce to you the theme of our next year's conference and the coordinator who will make sure that conference will go according to plan. The coordinator of the conference is Dr. Prashanthi Narangoda. Thank you very much for accepting the post, Prashanthi, and all the very best for you next year. I'm sure all of us will be very, very supportive of the conference next year as well. And also, I would like to introduce the theme of next year's conference. We will be working around the theme of the digital humanities, and we will be looking at the new possibilities and the new challenges afforded by this emerging field in our discipline. So please keep your eyes peeled and your ears wide open. I'm sure there will be news about what we plan to do as we develop our theme further. All right, that brings me to the end of the vote of thanks. Thank you very, very much. Have a good day.
Thank you, Dr. Ramola.
දින දෙකක් පුරාවට පැවැත්වෙන මෙම මානව ශාස්ත්‍ර සම්මන්ත්‍රණයට සහභාගී වී නව්‍ය පර්යේෂණ විමසමින් අගයමින් ඔබේ දැනුම වර්ධනය කර ගැනීමට මෙය මහඟු අවස්ථාවක් කරගන්නා ලෙසට ඔබ සැමට ආරාධනා කරමින් 2016 ජාත්‍යන්තර මානව ශාස්ත්‍ර සම්මන්ත්‍රණයේ සමාරම්භක උළෙලේ අවසානය මෙසේ සනිටුහන් කරන්නම්. ඔබ සැමට සුබ දවසක්. 2 நாட்களில் நடத்தப்படும் ஆய்வு நிகழ்ச்சிகளை உங்களில் ஆர்வம் உள்ளவர்களுக்கு மிகவும் உபயோகமாக இருக்கும் என்று நம்புகின்றோம். தயவு செய்து இந்த நிகழ்ச்சிகளில் பங்கு பெற்றுமாறு வேண்டுகின்றோம். இத்துடன் சர்வதேச மானிடவியல் மாநாடு 2016ஆம் ஆண்டு ஆரம்ப விழாவை நிறைவு அடைகின்றது. நன்றி, வணக்கம்.
All right. As Anuradha very appropriately mentioned, that brings our opening ceremony to a close, but all of you are welcome to refreshments and tea which will be served in K14. You will be escorted to K14 in buses, so don't miss the brief ride. Also, the special guests and our presenters are invited to the conference dinner, which will be held tonight at 6:30 p.m. at Saminro Hotel, Ganemula Road, Kadavata. Okay, thank you for your presence today. On behalf of the ICH committee, we look forward to 2 days of incomparable academic and fellowship experience with all of you. Please rise for the national anthem.
Ataman wala dulu kiri jaya bumi ramnya. Apa mata sepa siri sekta sadana, jiwan marga. Ini gandungan apa bhakti puja, namo namo mata. Atas Sri Rangga, namo 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 mata. Teriya, Obamaya apa satya, Obamaya apa shakti, apa hada tula bhakti, apa ayuki, apa dia